My job is to sort of set the scene a little bit on this topic and the rise of sectoral regulation for big tech. What does the future hold? So taking it a little bit outside of the pure sort of data protection context. And I think, stating the obvious almost, the last 5 years have seen calls for regulation of the digital economy across the globe, even in America. Perhaps a not very successful presidential candidate, you may remember, though it was Elizabeth Warren, she actually even said, well, if I get elected, which obviously didn't happen, we all know that, then there's going to be a law and we're going to break up the big tech companies because enough is enough. That obviously didn't happen. However, in Europe, the tide is seemingly turning a little bit more in favor of proper regulation of the big tech companies, both in the European Union and also in the UK. So in Europe, we have got a whole plethora of pretty groundbreaking legislation waiting for us. It's imminent. There's the Digital Markets Act, there's the Digital Services Act, there's an AI Act, there's a disinformation code that maybe Mark can even tell us something about. And so, and in the UK, my old employer, the Competition and Markets Authority, has been pushing for stronger ex-ante pro-competition regulation of big tech. And we've obviously also know that there's an online safety bill making its bumpy way through Parliament, trying to really enhance safety on the web. So in light of this, I was thinking, why don't I just step back and address the following question? Well, what, if anything, is wrong with big tech and the so-called GAFAM, or probably it's now GAMAM, and what's been done about it to date, and why has that not been sufficient, and what does the future hold? So what's wrong? And I do actually want to start on a positive that already Stuart has alluded to, an extremely important positive. All these, American tech companies, they have succeeded through innovation, ultimately. They've succeeded because some really bright people came up with some excellent ideas, and they created great products that we all love. And so I have to name check you, Malcolm. Now, for instance, Google. I mean, Google's given us the world's best search engine, an amazing navigation system, Google Maps. Both of these products became dominant because they were better than the competing products. And some of you might remember Street Map, for example. I'm not now going exactly, a long time ago. And now, so over the last 20 years, all these companies have become completely indispensable to our daily lives. And as I was thinking about the topic, I was almost challenging myself. So when was the last time I spent a day without using a smartphone, browsing the internet, navigating my way around the place, socializing online, networking online, dating online, gaming online, watching videos online, and obviously shopping online. And the list goes on. And in some ways, herein lies the problem. So having just, spoken a little bit about how brilliant all these products are and how important they are to make our daily lives better, more convenient, more sociable, there's also been really significant criticism. And to be honest, in a way, it's, nothing life's perfect. There's always going to be, life is gray. There are shades of gray everywhere. And so the issues have been privacy concerns, competition concerns, online safety concerns, lack of transparency, and also frequently a risk to our democracy. So let me just turn to each of those in turn. So on the competition side, my sort of, background really, there've been concerns across the globe that the online platforms have got market power. They have created ecosystems which rivals can no longer replicate, and that means that their position on the market is pretty much unchallengeable now. So we have Google in search, we have Facebook, Meta, and social media, and that authorities feel has, on occasion, led to bad outcomes for consumers. For instance, higher prices for advertisers directly. And whilst obviously most of these services are free, and we arguably pay for those with our data, we also pay for the products that are being advertised online. Those prices have also increased, the Competition and Markets Authority has found, as a result of lack of competition. So we've seen higher prices, we've seen potentially less choice, and we've also seen, according to the Competition Authority, which published a market study in 2020 on those things, in case you're interested, also an adverse impact on privacy on those sites. So those are sort of the competition concerns. Privacy concerns I've already alluded to, and just picking one example, the ICO, my organization, we've published a couple of reports in relation to AdTech, and we found that there are very serious concerns in terms of how privacy intrusive the edtech market is. For instance, a lack of transparency as how's the data used, where does it go, who's it going to share it with, how detailed is it, etc., etc. And then potentially, in some ways, most importantly, safety. Safety on the net. And I think that is probably something I have not yet found, well, maybe, but there's always someone who disagrees. But it seems there is a real emerging consensus here that that really needs improvement. And I always go back to this horrible story that, you know, a lot of us probably can't forget when in 2017 it was Molly Russell, a 14-year-old girl, committed suicide having had access, unbeknownst to her parents, to extremely graphic content in terms of self-harm, etc., on Instagram. And there's an ongoing inquest still, you know, quite a few years on. Now, very quickly then, what's been done about it? And I think there, the consensus that's emerging in amongst regulators in Brussels and governments and also in the UK is perhaps not enough. In a way, there's been a laissez-faire approach, let me say, and self-regulation has been, you know, the primary approach, and also reliance on ex-post enforcement powers of competition law and also data protection laws. Now, that hasn't worked, people seem to think. It's been too weak or potentially ineffectively applied. So, for instance, I'll just give you one example. People have been very concerned about a lack of prohibition of so-called killer acquisitions, whereby the big firms snap up the small rivals before they can get big and actually challenge the rivals, and that authorities have not either understood the potential for competition that was being suppressed or were a little bit blindsided.